Thank you, Josh, and thank you to the team for figuring it all out. Because we get to do that, right? We get to be with the things that aren't actually going the way we want them to go. And we get to bring joy and laughter and love to situations rather than anxiety, fear, and worry. Yes? Right? I know my community, they were anxious for you. Right? So, So we're in the middle of a 3-part series on sacred boundaries. As a path to mental well-being, this month is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And so last week we looked at what's mine to carry. This week we're looking at the grace of saying no. And next week we'll look at compassion without collapse. Wouldn't that be nice? So last week, just briefly, we were talking about enmeshment and codependence. We were talking about this idea that what enmeshment is it's when we have emotional over-identification with another individual and we do not have any boundaries. And codependence is something that arises from a need for emotional assurance because we're afraid that we're not going to be loved. And in both of those scenarios, whether it's enmeshment or codependence, we have forgotten our own and the other person's divine identity. That piece has fallen away. And I shared this as a scenario where this idea that what happens is we often feel caught between loyalty and resentment, right? The loyalty or the love we have for someone and the resentment that we're in a situation or a scenario that we really don't want to be in. And so it's a woman who loves both her mother and her sister-in-law, and she keeps finding herself in the middle, where her mother is criticizing and blaming and venting. And the woman finds herself defending, explaining, comforting, while being very frustrated and very resentful. And when she tells her mother, I really don't like when this happens, the mom's response was, well, I need somebody to vent to. Ring any bells? Right? And so she's not, and so then she continues to listen. How many of us do that? We continue to listen. So in the codependent relationship, we become an enabler. We're enabling the behavior, the energy, the dynamic. And so the question is, what are you saying yes to? What is it? What is the thing that you are saying yes to when what you actually want to do is say no? And part of it is, I think, especially in New Thought, right, where it's all about yes, 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 we affirm, it's yes, yes, yes. We need the emphatic no just as much as we need the sacred yes. So what if no was actually a doorway to more compassion, to more peace, to more honesty, to actually being more connection? Because we have this idea in our head that no is somehow closing something. And I want to invite us to reimagine that as no being an opening that we are creating. So what does that look like? We have to understand that boundaries are sacred promises, and they're actually promises to who? Ourselves. That's what they are. So it's a contract with yourself. It's not about punishing or rejecting others. In fact, it has nothing to do with others. It's a reflection of your spiritual integrity. And they're actually about being respectful and reverent to the divinity that you are and the divinity that the other person is. All too often when we're in codependence, it's because we feel like that person needs our help because they can't do it on their own. And without me, we have to understand that everyone has access to the same capacities. They show up differently in each of us. But how many people in here have been through a hard time? Just raise your hand if you've been through a hard time. Okay. Been through a hard time, but when you come out the other side of it, you have an understanding of something about yourself, about what your capacities are, that if you hadn't gone through the hard time, you would never have actually discovered. So when we step in and try to solve everything for everyone, guess what? We're actually short-circuiting their spiritual unfoldment. Really take that in. We're short-circuiting their capacity to step into something that is going to allow them to grow, allow them to understand themselves more deeply. So, sacred promises to ourselves, yes? That's what they are. So there's a sacredness to our boundaries. And it is arising from a place of spiritual integrity and truth. And it is to allow us to love more. Can you feel the truth of that? That if your boundaries are clear, then you can actually love even more freely. Because the thing that gets triggered is our fear. Fear that we're going to get run over, fear that we're going to get squashed, fear that we're, right? If we don't have those fears, we can love extravagantly. So let's say this affirmation together. My boundaries are sacred. I choose to love from a place of spiritual integrity and truth, not from something's wrong with someone. So this is a 3-step process. It's simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. The first thing is you state the issue with love. I love you and want to stay open, and this topic doesn't support my feeling connected with you. But can you hear how there's nothing in there that makes that person wrong? It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make anything. It's about, I love you, and in this conversation, so if it's the mother with the daughter and mother, right? It's like, I love you, and when you badmouth my sister-in-law, I don't feel connected to you. And you have to set a limit. If this comes up again, I'll end the conversation and we can speak at another time. Notice how it doesn't say, you better stop this or I'm never going to talk to you again. It's not an ultimatum, right? It's not an ultimatum. It's a limit, a loving limit. And then here's the trickiest part. You actually have to follow through every time. Every time you have to follow through. Consistency is what makes the boundary real. Parents in here, do you know that that's true with kids? Right? It's true in all of our relationships as well. It's the consistency that makes the boundary real. So I like to say, mind your own consciousness. Right? Mind your own consciousness. Do not get into other people's consciousness. It's none of your business. None of your business, right? Mind your consciousness. Now, some of the traps that we fall into because we're not minding our own consciousness is instead of boundaries, we step into manipulation. So, really clear, boundaries are not about convincing someone that they need to do what you want. Really hear that. Boundaries are not an opportunity to tell someone how they have to take care of you. And they are not about changing someone else. That is not what a boundary is. They are a loving statement of what you are willing to do or not do. Can you feel the difference? Okay, so the way this manipulation can show up, because what we need to do is shift our focus from the other, which is where we always want to place our focus because we don't want to look at ourselves. Mind your own consciousness. You need to bring it back to yourself. So you focus on what you need and what will be good for your well-being, right? I will not continue to talk to you when you are yelling. Manipulation is where you focus on what the other is supposed to do, like saying, if you yell, I'm going to leave. Yes? Can you feel the difference? Right? There's a punishment involved unless they do what you want them to do. You're going to make them suffer if they don't comply with what you want. Intent and emotional tone are everything when you're setting a boundary. So the intent needs to be communicated with clarity and respect, and it needs to focus on your personal needs. Whereas in manipulation, what we do is guilt trip and emotional blackmail. We might become passive aggressive. Oh, okay, you're not going. Okay, it's fine. No, it's fine, it's fine. I can do this by myself, it's fine. No, really, it's fine, right? So we do these things in our relationships all the time. Because we're manipulating when we want a specific response. That is not what boundaries are. Boundaries have nothing to do with the other person. Say that back to me. And if you can really get that piece, boundaries become a piece of cake. They do, they become a piece of cake. So they need to be communicated openly, and they need to be adjusted through mutual understanding. Again, it's not an ultimatum, right? It's not an ultimatum. And manipulation means that you are setting a boundary, and if that doesn't happen, right? So there's no room for common ground. There's no room for real connection in that. Can you feel that? And then the punishing of noncompliance. This is a big one, right? So boundaries are not intended to punish or control another person's actions, right? When we manipulate, we might withdraw affection, right? We might use the silent treatment. Ringing bells for anybody? We might create drama about extreme repercussions. Well, if you do that, I am never speaking to you again. Drama with extreme repercussions. And all of that is because we are trying to manipulate somebody into complying with what we want. And then the last one is that we don't use it to shame or control people. And this is how boundaries get used a lot. They get used a lot in this way around, I need to set a boundary with you, right? Because you are always dun, 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 right? We're shaming someone rather than bringing it back to ourselves. So we never invalidate another person's feelings or their experience. And the manipulation will be about, using guilt or invalidating. Oh, really? Really? That's what you're feeling? And these are all things we've all said, right? So we can all cop to it, right? And the idea is that you're using guilt because they're not complying, or shaming them into being a better person for their own good, because I know best. So healthy boundaries clarify how you connect with others and foster healthier relationships. They demonstrate respect for the autonomy and feelings of both parties. Manipulation is when we're trying to control others, disregarding their rights, their feelings, and we're really just causing harm and distress. State the issue with love. I love you and want to stay close, but this topic makes that hard. Set a limit. If this comes up again, I'll end the conversation. Not the friendship, not the connection, right? I'll end the conversation. Follow through every time. Consistency is what makes a boundary real. So the affirmation here is, healthy boundaries invite deeper love. I trust myself to speak compassionately and follow through with integrity and grace. Yeah, let's breathe into that. As I wrote that one, I was like, all right, here we go, right? Because this is the work This is the work. So let's say this together. Healthy boundaries invite deeper love. I trust myself to speak compassionately and follow through with integrity and grace. And this becomes the barometer that you check yourself against. Am I following through with integrity and grace? Or am I being snarky? Am I being passive aggressive? Am I allowing something else to be part of what this dynamic is because I'm pissed? And I don't mean drunk when I say pissed. I mean angry. So I want to link this back into my minority mental health lens, right? So boundaries, particularly in this dynamic, are an act of resistance and healing. So for people of color, for the LGBTQ plus community, for anyone who feels as if they are somehow sitting in an oppressive environment, setting boundaries isn't just about self-care, it's actually survival. And so that pressure to conform, that pressure to just stay silent, absorbing all of that, and let me be really honest, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I remember at one point in my ministry, I've been doing this since 2012, and I had a community member, I'm not going to say which one it was, where I was at the time, came up to me and said, "Do you always have to talk about your wife?" And I remember just thinking, everybody talks about their spouse. Everybody talks about their spouse. If you had a minister who was in a heterosexual relationship, would you be asking them the same question? Do you always have to talk about your wife? Do you always have to talk about your husband? And can you feel how that impacts, right? And just think about that energetic happening to you all the time. All the time. So, what can happen is, as someone from one of these oppressed groups, they are setting a boundary, and the perception of it can be seen as aggressive or difficult. That trope about the angry black woman, the angry black woman, do you know why? It's because they're much better at setting boundaries than a lot of us are. And we translate that into difficult and aggressive. All right? That's what we translate it into. It doesn't mean it isn't necessary. So however it is that you're absorbing whatever that boundary setting is, you need to get over the fact of your own interpretation of how you think it's being shared with you. And you need to understand and respect that this is necessary. Right? This is necessary. And they're allowed to be angry. Right? They're allowed. It's like, I can't even imagine the rage, the generational rage, right? So we want to support the boundaries of those whose mental health has been threatened by systemic harm. Because remember, while the daughter was choosing, I feel great. Remember, in our example, the daughter was choosing to say yes to allowing her mother to step all over her boundaries. But we talked about last week how this is systemic. It's not a personal issue. It's systemic. So there's a difference. No one in these groups has chosen to still stay in that dynamic. They were born into it. So it requires something of those of us who have a greater sense of freedom, who don't experience that level of oppression, to actually open up and be a little bit more compassionate and kind and forgiving and respectful about what it is that we are hearing and not take it personally. Not take it personally. All right. So the affirmation here is, I honor those who set boundaries. I make space for boundaries I may not understand, trusting they are sacred. Can we say this together? I honor those who set boundaries. I make space for boundaries I may not understand, trusting they are sacred. Now, would we want the same thing coming back to us? So we cannot receive what we are not also giving. The same way we cannot give what we don't already have, we can't receive what we're not willing to give. If we're not willing to give forgiveness, we're not going to accept forgiveness, right? So here's the reflections for the week. Where are you saying yes out of guilt, fear, or obligation? What arises when you think about setting a boundary? How does that feel in your body? How does that feel to set a boundary? How do you use manipulation rather than boundaries in your relationships? And just be honest, it's okay. Anybody in here manipulate someone in their relationships? And everybody's hand should go up, right? Okay, so just acknowledge that that is a strategy and coping mechanism that we have all been taught. We were raised in that. So we need to pay attention and acknowledge it so that then we can begin to transform it. So do not beat yourself up. This is about growth and process and stepping into something new. It's not about beating ourselves up because we're a bad right? No shame. We're not creating something that creates shame for ourselves either. Yes? How do you feel when someone sets a boundary with you? How does that feel? Right? And just, again, be honest. What is that gets sort of triggered if somebody is setting a really clear boundary with you? Do you want to turn it around and make them, oh, they're so aggressive, oh, they're so controlling, oh, they're so, like, what is the narrative that you create when somebody sets a boundary? And how can you begin practicing small, grace-filled no's? So do not take on the tissue issue of your life this week, okay? Start with small, grace-filled no, not the big thing. You gotta build the muscle, build the capacity. And in what ways can you respect and support the boundaries of others, especially those who have historically been denied the right to say no? Yes? Good reflection questions? So let's take this into a time of meditation. Let's listen deeply. So we've been doing all this head stuff, and let's quiet and see what begins to arise within all of us. So as we close our eyes and center, just noticing what might be stirred up, noticing what might be alive within us. Noticing any willingness, noticing any resistance. No judgment, just noticing. And the invitation is to breathe into whatever you're noticing and allow that foundation that is the very truth of your life to arise in your awareness. That infinite spaciousness, that infinite love, that absolute grace. It's nothing that any of us need to become. It is our true nature. It is our true name. And just open into that space of what boundary means in that context of infinite love. So there is no boundary to the love itself. Our boundaries are how in time and in space we create the container for that love to be fully present. So let's rest here. Just listening, discerning, allowing for a few moments, a few minutes in the silence. And as we begin to come back into time and space, the invitation is just to allow an awakening to one small, grace-filled no. One small step in this process of understanding boundaries as a path of love, as a path of connection, as a path of greater peace, of greater intimacy. And just knowing that this awareness, I just see it growing within all of us throughout this coming week. And welcoming that place to listen, to explore, and to grow more fully into who and what we truly are. In gratitude for this and so much more, I do give thanks right here, right now. And so it is. Amen. Ashe. So let's say this affirmation one more time. My boundaries are sacred. I choose to love from a place of spiritual integrity and truth. And so it is.